Welcome everybody to the May 3rd, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. I was unable to do a show yesterday, so there will be a show this Friday to make up for it. I'd like to start off by giving sort of a message of support to a somewhat ally of this program. You see, Matt Walsh went on Twitter recently and said, "I have been the target of the internet outrage mobs more times than I can count. Here's my one-step plan for dealing with them. 1. Do nothing. They have no power. All they can do is complain. You can put your phone down, and it's like they don't even exist. So relax and do nothing." Now, to Matt Walsh, I just want to say, don't listen to the haters, ever. I mean, your nonsense Twitter, your atrocious Daily Wire articles, and the complete lunacy you call a podcast have provided me with so much entertainment and will hopefully provide me with countless hours of entertainment for years to come. I don't want you to ever leave, Matt. And to anybody who is part of the Matt Walsh outrage mob against him or something, don't outrage him. Encourage him so we can all laugh at him together. Oh, and Matt, while I have you, continue being angry about gay marriage. He's still angry about that. You think I'm joking? Oh, okay, you probably don't because you know Matt Walsh by now. Yeah, yesterday he tweeted, "Every slippery slope argument made by conservatives over the past 50 years has been proven right. Every single one." I was originally going to actually go through Daily Wire archives and see, okay, did Obamacare lead to the United States becoming communist? No. However, this girl on Twitter, Skrbelly, Skrbelly, had the greatest reply to all of this. "It's true. Me and my goat bride Lammet being forced to live under Sharia law, having our guns confiscated by government, not being able to defend ourselves from all these gay frogs demanding that we bake them wedding cakes, and our right to pray so disseminated we can't even say OMG. You get a follow. Skrbelly, at Skrbelly1, you get a follow. I'm following you live. Yeah, as any surprise, Matt has spent the last couple hours trying to justify his ludicrous position. The slippery slope argument is not a fallacy. People these days often dismiss slippery slope arguments because they think that all slippery slope arguments... I think he's getting a nickel every time he says slippery slope arguments. Must be inherently false. This is because most people just struggle to understand logic. I blame the school system. Now, I will give him that just pointing to a logical fallacy and saying that's wrong is in itself a logical fallacy. However, he doesn't explain how his specific example is correct. He just can't figure that out for some reason. Slippery slope arguments are not inherently fallacious. The point of the argument is to reveal the faultness of a certain idea by showing where that idea inevitably leads. For instance, Matt Walsh identifies as a conservative and believes in traditional values. Therefore, that will inevitably lead to all of us being farmers, because that's traditional. Yeah, we're all gonna have to work hard on the farms again, Matt. Just 'cause you wanted your traditional society. This is your brain on paleoconservatism. I've heard a lot of people mock the slippery slope argument against gay marriage. This is where it comes back to, by the way. I've never heard anyone offer even a semi-coherent rebuttal to it. By the way, Matt, if you're against gay marriage, I'd recommend blaming the 14th Amendment, which gives people equal rights. You should have imagined Congressman Matt Walsh. Listen, we can't pass this amendment because one day the gays may be able to get married. And by the way, before somebody accuses me of proving Matt's point, I would like to say that he also ignores the fact that even if, realistically, you take one line of thinking to an unreasonable extreme, that still doesn't mean the inevitable, the conclusion to begin with, the first point of the slope, if you will, is inherently wrong. You're just saying, well, if I strawman you enough, eventually it can lead to something even worse. Okay, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If the new definition of marriage is a consensual agreement between people who love each other, adults that love each other, Matt, that definition can obviously apply to a host of troubling arrangements. What is illogical about that argument? I've been told that it is illogical, but no one has ever explained how. Well, you know what, Matt? I'll give you that. Maybe some people haven't completely explained it. So let's look at history, for instance. Now, despite what Matt Walsh seems to think, gay marriage isn't something us radical leftists came up with in the 1960s as part of our plot to destroy Western civilization. Well, they weren't exactly called that. Same-sex unions did exist in ancient Greece, Rome, ancient Mesopotamia, sorry, and in some parts of China. In fact, the emperor of the Roman Empire, sorry, forgot that for a second, a brain fart there. Nero had married at least 2 men in his lifetime. Not only that, but at least 2 Roman emperors were in same-sex unions. And 13 out of the first 14 Roman emperors are believed by historians to either have been bisexual or homosexual. So Matt, I don't recall there being bestiality in the Roman Empire. Just saying. I could also get into how marriage in those times meant something very different from what it means now, and things like extramarital affairs and even downright polygamy were extremely common. But in fact, the most common form of marriage found in the Bible is polygamy. And while I'm on the topic, I'm not going to get too much into this because I don't know as much about this specific aspect. But I remember I read somewhere like a good couple years ago that it used to be common in either ancient Greece or ancient Rome, probably both, to where essentially one person within the marriage would go have an affair specifically to advance both them and their partner. Like, specifically, usually to get land or to get favors or things like that. And it wasn't until much later when we got the modern version of marriage in our head, that being, or at least more modernist would probably be a better word. You know, the one man, one woman, no sex outside of marriage, the thing Matt Walsh believes in, basically. But seriously, though, why would a man who writes articles called Dear Pro-Aborters, I assume you won't mind if I stop on these endangered sea turtle eggs, and be so obsessed with proving that slippery slope arguments aren't bad? Anyway, the Matt Walsh, I don't know if that would really be a story, took up 10 whole minutes, and if you don't know, the rules for making an episode is they have to have 2 stories, or the episodes have to be at least 10 minutes long, and has to be 10 minutes long, not or. So we don't have a second story yet, so here's what I'm gonna do. You remember townhall.com, you know, that beacon of journalism that published an article in which Dennis Prager calls liberals terrorists, and is the only outlet I could find that still takes Pat Buchanan seriously. Well, I was just browsing through their Twitter, and I found this article, What Would a Progressive America Look Like? I haven't read this yet. This is a complete cold read. Okay. And in case you're wondering, this was written by a woman named Laura Hollis. I've never heard of her. Okay, when I looked up her name, I got a fictional character from a TV show called Carmilla. So, already off to a great start. Let's actually just read what she has to say. While the November elections may seem like a long way off, at least for those of us not running for office, we need to be thinking about the consequences of those elections. She counts. That's a full paragraph, by the way. As I have noted before, to be clear, I'm not reading any of your previous articles, Lauren. Democrats running for office this year have been styling themselves as centrists, taking policy positions that seem taken from Republican platforms. But there is no indication that any Democrat will govern from a center these days, despite the fact that's what they've been doing since the 1990s. And every reason to think that they will scrumptooth pressure brought to bear by the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and move left. Oh no. All 5 Democratic representatives who are actually liked by progressives. You ever actually talk to a progressive about the Democratic Party? Most of us have quite a few issues with them. And as for pressure, you mean democracy? The more Democrats there are in Congress, the further left that body will go. Oh, I wish that were the case. So before you vote for a Democrat for Congress, implying the people who go to townhall.com vote Democrat, it's worth asking, what would a Congress controlled by Democrats do? First and foremost, of course, is the impeachment of President Donald Trump. Many of the left's mouthpieces make no bones about the fact that this is their endgame. Others, including best-selling author and talk show host Mark Levin, they take Mark Levin seriously. And oh, it's not a town hall article. Okay. Warned that the investigation into collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia had morphed into a thinly disguised and arguably unconstitutional effort to drum up anything to justify impeachment. The risk to the country if Democrats play fast and loose with the law to unseat a duly elected president are grave. Okay. Can we just say, when you have to write articles about how democracy is actually a bad thing, which these people did, because remember, Donald Trump did not win the popular vote. You probably shouldn't talk about how the president was then democratically elected as your reason to support them. But the enormity of the effort obscures the other threats to American liberty if so-called progressives again in quotations, get control of the government. What would a progressive America look like? Recent headlines provide plenty of sobering evidence. Progressives tout their commitment to universal health care, often using the National Health Service of Great Britain as an exemplar. But the distressing cases of Charlie Gard and Alfie Evans, okay, I didn't look into the Gard case very much, but I've said it like 3 times on this show now. No, I think this is the 4th time I said it on the show. But Evans could have been treated by Italy, which has universal health care. I read out the Italian part of the Italian healthcare policy on this show. It's just the NHS didn't like that, for the love of God. Presents an abject lesson in what can go wrong when personal healthcare choices intersect with the progressive viewpoint that government knows best. British hospital staffs told the parents of both gravely ill children that it was in their child's best interest to die, and the parents were prohibited from taking those children elsewhere for alternative treatment, which every progressive was against, by the way. American colleges and university escalaves of progressive thought, which is why every single person with an economics... I always like this, by the way, because there's an internal contradiction here. Every time somebody says that universities are parts of progressive thought, I want you to see if they ever, and honestly, for support of capitalism, mention a college economics course they took. If so, you know they're just spewing nonsense. Recent surveys show that nearly 20% of college students think violence is justified against speech one finds offensive. Didn't Lindsey Graham once say he was fine in limiting speech in times of war? Oh, he's a Republican, so you'll never mention that. More than and by the way, Lindsey Graham is a U.S. Senator. These are random college kids, so excuse me if I hold him to a little bit of a higher standard. More than twice that numbers think that the U.S. Constitution prohibits hate speech. It does not. The protests and even riots we have seen on university campuses bear this out with frightening clarity. Less violent, but more insidious, are the widespread campus policies restricting speech and conduct. Think trigger warnings, safe spaces, and microaggressions. I like the hatred of safe spaces on a right-wing safe space, by the way. Seriously, imagine if I submitted an op-ed to Town Hall under a different name, where I called for, I don't know, communism and Antifa super soldier martial law, and they rejected, which they're well within their rights to do so. Could I just go on and say, townhall.com is a safe space for conservatives? I mean, I could. I'd be stupid to do so, but this is townhall.com. They're not very intellectual. That could potentially cause offense. The Obama administration's notorious Dear Colleges, or Dear Colleague letter purported to advise colleges how to investigate and deter sexual assault on campus. Dun dun dun! In practice, those recommendations gutted due process for anyone accused of sexual misconduct, depriving them of the presumption of innocence, the right to conceal, the right to confront their accuser, and even the right to appeal, which don't exist on private property. You have no rights on private property. Okay? Are we done with this nonsense line of reasoning now? Over 150 lawsuits alleging violations of due process have been filed since 2011. And give me the exact number of all the ones that won. Oh, wait, we left that part out. Other abuses of legal processes should get our attention, like the John Doe raids conducted in Wisconsin against conservative political activists, later declared unconstitutional. In many essential, I have not looked into this enough to comment on it. In many essential respects, these are of a piece with the conflicting standards we increasingly see applied by the FBI and the Department of Justice, the Federal Election Commission, and even the IRS to Democrats or progressives versus Republicans or conservatives. I'm just going to point this out. If you're talking about the IRS targeting, let me see something. Because they have a link here to an article. They are, by the way. I'd just like to point out that 10% of the groups that were part of that scandal were liberal groups. Shouldn't the number have been 0%? Disregarding of existing laws is also behind much of our current immigration crisis. There is none, though. Illegal immigration from Mexico has been net zero since 2008. Okay, it was net zero throughout the entire Obama administration. And you guys just pretended it wasn't. I'm not even reading the rest of this paragraph. Cities and states run by progressive politicians also provide cautionary tales of mismanagement. Chicago has strict gun control laws and one of the country's highest rates of gun violence, although the numbers are down this year, thankfully. Reports of widespread trash, used needles, and human feces all over downtown San Francisco shocked the country. Fully 1/3 of residents of Portland, Oregon have considered leaving because of massive homelessness problems. The state of Illinois, run by Democrats for decades, is facing an unfunded pension liability of $250 billion. Okay, I looked into their Illinois has been run by Democrats for decades claim, and by that I mean I just googled list of governors of Illinois, and currently the governor is a guy named Bruce Rannor, I think that's how it's pronounced at least, who's a Republican. Before that, the last Republican governor was George Ryan in 2003. If you're wondering, by the way, Bruce entered in 2015, so about a decade is decades. Now, it wasn't decades. It was 12 years. This is basic math. And then there are Democrats' dreams of taxpayer-funded abortion on demand. A completely disarmed citizenry. Source, please. Higher taxes, and a Supreme Court populated by liberal justices who believe the Constitution is a living document. What do you think the word amendment means? At the local, state, and federal level, there is ample evidence to demonstrate that progressive policies crush civil liberties rather than protecting them. Oh, you mean like stop and frisk, the Patriot Act, all militarization of the police, leave the most vulnerable among us victimized, and break the banks and the backs of ordinary citizens. Americans cannot fall prey to thinking that the midterm elections are less important than the presidential elections. There is far too much at stake. I have no clue what I just read. And that's where it ends, by the way. Oh, that one went on for a little while. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I'm Ephrom, and good night.